with Sheikh Ibrahim al-Pasha, who refuted the authority of one of the Abbasid Caliphs, because this particular Abbasid Caliph wanted to choose one of his own courtiers as his successors, rather than the tradition where the Ummah chooses who their leader is going to be. And he wanted to choose this particular one because he was very close to him in terms of monetary funds, and they were good mates basically. But this individual did not have knowledge and wisdom which will be beneficial to the Ummah. So the Shaykh's grandfather and his maternal uncle, they took a stance against this particular Abbasid Khalif, and eventually they were imprisoned and executed. The Shaykh himself, Imam al-Tahawi, learnt the deen firstly from his mother. His mother is the sister of Shaykh al-Muzin. Shaykh al-Muzin is a direct student of Imam al-Shafi'i, Sayyid Muhammad bin Idris radiyallahu anhu arda. She herself, the mother of Imam al-Tahawi, taught her son whilst he was still a young child. He also learnt from one of his maternal uncles, and also from the collection of the texts that were written by his father. He used to read them and then go to his father, and he would repeat the matan, the text. He would learn it by heart, as is the traditional way of learning something. I'm not so sure about the madrasas and so today, but if you go back home, where we come from in East Africa for example, and even some parts of India or Pakistan and Yemen and Syria, to learn a text, the traditional way is to learn it from beginning till the end by heart. You just literally read through it and you learn it by heart. And then you go to the Shaykh and you repeat it to them. And as you recite it to the Shaykh would make you stop and give you commentary upon it. It could take 10 years, 15 years, 5 years, 5 months, depending upon your mental capability. But eventually you would go through the whole text. And this is how the deen was learned. Imam al-Tahawi memorized the whole Quran at the age of 9 years old. By the time he was 11 years old, he was becoming a master in Shafi'i fiqh jurisprudence, the school of thought, the Shafi'i school of thought. Imam al-Tahawi eventually sat in the company of his maternal uncle, another Shaykh named by Imam Ibrahim, who was a Shafi'i faqih. During those gatherings, during those lessons, the Imam would refute his uncle. The Shaykh would say something in Shafi'i fiqh, and Imam al-Tahawi would say, but I cannot grasp that, I cannot understand that. So his uncle eventually got very annoyed with him and said to him, Al-Tahawi, you will eventually leave us. Imam al-Tahawi took offense to this and he stopped going to his uncle's lessons. Imam al-Tahawi then eventually started to go to the lessons by Shaykh Muhammad al-Izzan al-Hanafi, who was a Hanafi Shaykh who came to Egypt as a Hanafi Qadi, a Hanafi Faqih, to give legal rulings as a judge. He started to attend these Hanafi fiqh lessons, and eventually Imam al-Tahawi became a scholar in Hanafi fiqh. To the extent where today in Hanafi fiqh, his name is mentioned as a name of authority. If someone mentions that Imam al-Tahawi has said so and so, it is taken on as a legal ruling, because the Imam exceeded the brinks and the boundaries of ijtihad. He became a mujtahid in Hanafi fiqh. Imam al-Tahawi compiled this particular text known as simply Al-Aqeedatul Tahawiyya, the creed of Imam al-Tahawi, and within it he mentions the legal rulings and regulations by which we stand to correct our belief in the oneness of Allah, in Nubuwwah, Ilahiyya, Iman, wal Qadar. We'll go through all of these one by one, inshallah. The Imam compiled this particular text for a reason. Now up here, one may start to ask, well, what is the reason for a text in Aqidah? Why do we have a text in Aqidah? Where did the disputes come about? In differences in aqidah, in belief. Surely all Muslims believe the same thing. So why do we need a text to tell us that Allah is one? Why do we need someone to write it down and explain it to us? How do you believe in the oneness of Allah? Surely everyone believes in Allah. The differences came about within the 2nd and the 3rd century of Islam, when certain groups would arise and they would refute the scholars, but their refutation was then nullified because the people who would refute the scholars of the deen, they were politically motivated. This often happens, even today we see it, and it's very unfortunate, where, for example, you're sitting in the masjid one day, yes, Maulana Sahib says कि भाई वुज़ू में 4 फ़र्ज़ हैं, ठीक है, पहला मुंह धोना पेशानी के बालों से, दोनों कानों के लौ से ठोड़ी के नीचे तक, दूसरा दोनों हाथों को कोहनियों समेत धोना, तीसरा चौथाई सर का मसा करना, और फिर पाँव को टखनों समेत धोना. So these 4 fard are the 4 fard of wudu according to the Hanafi school. Everything else you do is sunnah, because these 4 have been mentioned in Surah Al-Ma'idah. So the Imam would be explaining this to you in the masjid. Someone may stand up and say, "Main nahi manta." The Imam asks, "Well, aap mane ya na, whether you accept it or not, it's been divinely decreed for us. It's from the Quran. It's not my opinion, so and so's opinions. It's the Quran, the Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this." And the people who understand the Quran better than ourselves, the Mufassirin, they have derived these rulings. The Muhaddithin, who have read the text of the Hadith and understood Usul al-Hadith, who have mastered that particular science. Mufassirin, the Muhaddithin, and then we have the Fuqaha, the Faqirs, the Imams of legal rulings, of jurisprudence, who have mastered that particular science, Usul al-Fiqh and so on. Where and how do you derive a ruling from the Quran and the Hadith and the Ijma of the Sahaba, the consensus of the Sahaba, and qiyas, logical methodology, rulings? How do you put the 4 together and come up with the ruling in the deen? Those people who have mastered that science, they have said, they are the scholars of the deen. And about such people, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, "Al-ulama warathatul anbiya." So we do not refute or argue against the scholars of the deen. Someone may say, "Well, मैं तेरी बात नहीं मानता, मैं मानो का ना मानो." किसी के मानने से सही कभी गलत नहीं होता. By accepting or not accepting does not change the fact that the truth is the truth. Sahih. Now, the person who refutes the legal ruling, if they are asked, "Why do you refute it?" "I have never heard it before. मैंने कभी नहीं सुना." So what? Before I actually heard that there were 4 fard in wudu, I had never heard it, so it didn't make it false. The moment that I heard it from my teacher, I accepted it. How many of us go out to learn a science, an art, go to do a degree, and then whatever the lecturer says to you, you start questioning everything the lecturer says? You ain't going to get a degree, bro, are you? You're going to say, "Be on your way, mate." We teach this because we know this. That's what the lecturer is going to say. The fact is, a hairdresser knows how to cut hair better than a chef. The chef would know how to cook food better than a mechanic. A mechanic knows how to fix cars. An alim knows the deen better than a doctor. Because a doctor is a doctor. An alim is an alim. Regardless of how popular the doctor may become, the truth is the truth. The deen can be learnt by many people. Knowledge can be taken on by everyone. But the process that leads to one becoming a scholar of the deen, if that process, if you do not go through that procedure, then you do